Welcome to Bound by Books. I'm Marianne and I write paranormal romantic suspense and paranormal romance and all things paranormal. And today I am joined by
I'm Sherry Hayes, and I write steamy contemporary romance and BDSM erotic romance.
wow,
And
we've been thrown
yeah,
together a lot lately.
this month I do not know what happened to this month, but between the illnesses and the preparing for Christmas and just the general busyness of life, it has really thrown a wrench in the works for everybody
Yeah,
in
yeah.
our
I mean, we've
in
got
our
uh
group.
we've got people who are busy with their deadlines and responsibilities for year end, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about today. And,
Mhm.
so Sherry and I are just like, not that we're not busy and not a lot of responsibilities. We do. It's just we seem to be the ones that have a little bit less stringent, more asynchronous kind of schedules that we can, get together. So we are very lucky, number one, that we know what we're talking about. And number two, that we like each other, which is a good
I was
thing.
going to say, yeah, I think Marianne and I's our schedules are a little more flexible, whereas we can insert things. Whereas, Danielle has a day job, so she's pretty much stuck. She can't do anything for 40 hours a week. I mean, she's in
Right.
that block, and then of course Tina's got all of the end of the year stuff going on with her publishing house.
Right.
So yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And like Marion said, we are going to kind of touch on that a little bit today. We wanted to talk kind of just in general what has been kind of some of the stuff's been going on in the industry, in the author world. And the big news here this last week or so has been that we don't know if the USA Today bestseller list is going to be in existence anymore.
Right. No, we're spilling the tea today, that's for sure. Um, it was actually a shock to me when I heard that they had let go of their, for lack of a better term, their curator, to curate who
Yeah.
curates the list and makes the decision on who's on it and whatnot. I mean, there was the USA Today list had the top 100, and I know it's been a bucket list item for a lot of authors to
Oh
want to hit
yeah.
the USA Today. I mean,
Especially
but
indie authors.
yeah, because they
Y-
were a little more favorable towards indie authors than other lists. The New York Times is a bucket list for some of us. Washington Post, definitely. Amazon is a little easier because it depends on the algorithms, and their bestseller tag, which I've had and
Mhm.
Sherry's had, is that banner, that orange banner that goes across. You may have it for 2 days and then lose it, and then all of a sudden it comes back. It really depends on how sales are doing. But
Yeah.
the USA Today, New York Times, and Washington Post,
Well, it was about sales. I mean,
yeah,
USA Today was the list that was about sales.
right.
If you reached a certain level in your sales during 1 week, during that set week, you could make the USA bestseller bestseller list. Whereas the New York Times and some of the others, they not only they sales is one factor in what they use to determine who's going to be in the bestseller list, but it's not the determining factor. Whereas the USA um bestseller list it was all about sales. That's what it was there. So
Right.
everybody was on an even playing field essentially.
Right.
Um
And we call, in the industry, if you're a newbie author listening to us, we call it, earning your letters. And, earning your letters for most authors is a coveted thing. It's what, you want. Now, there are some very, very popular authors who sell well, and for some reason those letters become elusive. They just never have, for some reason. Maybe it was just the wrong work, or maybe they're earning their dollar figure over the a span of multiple books as opposed to one book. So
Mhm.
it's a I hate to say it's like a witch's brew, but it kind of is. And in a
Yeah.
matter of luck and a matter of timing and whatnot, algorithms and so forth. But it's a sad thing if it does go the way of the dodo. Don't you think?
I do. I do. I think and it came out of the blue. That's part of it. I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like even to the lady Mary who was the one who was let go, um this was not an expected thing. This seems like it did kind of come out of left
Blindsided.
field.
Yeah.
And it is a really sad, I think, thing for, like I said, indie authors specifically, because this was kind of the epitome of being putting us on an even playing field. I mean, the New York Times bestseller list, they specifically handicapped indie authors years ago because they kind of took out or diminished the um impact of ebook sales versus
Yeah.
paperback
Yep.
sales. And of course, most indies, we're not in bookstores, most physical bookstores. So the majority of our sales do come from ebooks. And by diminishing those numbers, those sale numbers, making them less important or removing them entirely, it makes it very hard for indies to compete for those coveted New York Times slots.
Yep.
Um,
I mean, the gal that we're
so
talking about, her name is Mary Caden, or Cadden, Cadden, and she was the presiding editor for 26 years. And she was lumped in with a bunch of, I guess, year-end layoffs because, like everything else in this world,
yeah.
things are suffering because of price and supply chain and whatnot. And it's either, I'm hoping it's more of a growing pain or a transformational pain as opposed to death throes. But the title that I've just seen is that they are saying that they are pausing the
Mhm.
USA Today bestseller list, as it lays off their presiding editor. Maybe they're
Right.
looking to take it in a different direction. Like I said, maybe this is transformational. Um, Maybe there was a bucking of the heads of the uh, people, the powers that be, and her creative vision as to what she would like to see. I would hope that it wasn't a battle over legitimacy of indies or not, because that
Right.
would
And
just set indie publishing back.
right, and that's my concern is, okay, say they do go forward with this, are they then going to go forward with a model similar to the New York Times list, where they're now going to handicap indies or take them out of the equation altogether? And because again, right now, the USA Today's bestseller, or at least before this happened, they were the place where indies could have an equal playing field and an equal opportunity to get their letters.
Correct.
And now it's so up in the air. Who
I
knows
mean,
what we're going to
there
end up
were
with.
some issues in the past with gargantuan sized anthologies
Mhm.
being put together and sold for 99 cents, which is their prerogative.
Right?
It's up, you want to, you do you, baby, that type of a situation. But there was some kind of rumor about fraud where the people who were they were charging exorbitant fees for authors to be included into these anthologies, and those
Mhm.
fees were then used as, number one, as profit, and number two, to then purchase ebooks.
Copies. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that they were being quote unquote sold, but they weren't being sold in a legitimate manner. They were being bought
Right.
out, and then it was the claim was that they were being donated then once they were bought. To try and get, the trying to navigate the loopholes to be able to win their letters that way. Now, I have some friends who have hit the USA Today bestseller list in anthologies and so forth. And, more power to them, more power to them. But if you put out an anthology and your anthology does well in legitimate sales where the mass public are buying the anthology because you've advertised the hell out of it, you've pimped the hell out of it, and you have then reached a certain penultimate sale level that then it bestows upon you the USA bestseller list letters, then great. But if it's something
Right.
that's being done in a categorically shady, sketchy kind of a way, that kind of casts aspersions on it. So maybe that is something that is being curated on the other end, is to make sure that the letters are being
Good.
bestowed on authors who have legitimately sold these books, as
Yeah.
opposed to being bought by one or two people running well,
Hmm.
for lack of a better word, a scam, So
Yeah. But you would think that in that aspect, if that was the case, that should be something that would be easily remedied internally, not by firing or laying off uh somebody who has been with the company and
for
who
26
basically is
years. Yeah.
this is their baby for the last 26 years.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
we will see how it ends up
Yep.
panning out, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on if you haven't been keeping an eye on it already, and you do have, even if they're far off aspirations of potentially hitting a list one day, this is definitely something I would highly suggest keeping an eye on in the industry. That brings us to number two
Yep.
topic that we wanted to touch on today, which is another kind of ripple that has been moving through the industry here as of late, and that is AI.
Artificial intelligence. Yes.
Yes, yes. And it started with Google Play offering uh AI narrated stories,
Mm-hmm.
which most
For
authors
free.
were right for free, which most authors were, if not happy about, were at least open to
Correct.
and into considering. And it's something that I've considered for my books, and I'm going to, I believe, do a trial run with one of my stories here within the first quarter of next year, just sheerly for the fact that I have a lot of readers that I encounter, especially at book signings, that are, they're like, oh, I like to listen to my books, and that's great, but the cost of having a book professionally narrated, which I would love to do, is very it's just very cost prohibitive. I mean, let's just be honest about it. My smaller books, it's over $3,000 to get those, you know, those narrated professionally. And my largest book is up over 12,000 to get that, narrated. So it's a big expense. It's a
Yes.
big, huge investment, especially when you've already spent money on your cover and your editing and all of that. And so it is.
Well,
But
I think trial run is the operative
mhm,
word in what you just said,
yeah.
because, I have to play devil's advocate here. You know, AI sounds like it's a great thing to do.
Mhm.
But that depends on whether or not the technology is there. Because when you pay for someone to professionally,
Yep.
narrate your book, you're getting someone who's going to add the emotion, they're going to add the inflection, they're going to add the pacing, the correct pacing, and they're going to do the voices, and so it's
Mhm.
the same way that writing is a craft and a discipline.
Exactly.
Narration is definitely a craft and a discipline and a
Yeah.
talent, just like writing
Mhm.
has talent.
Right.
So I mean, for my narration friends that are out there, I my heart breaks for them because this is
Mhm.
something that's taking away their bread and butter. And it's also something that it's not going to be the same quality. There's just no way.
No.
The technology's not there. I mean, this is going
No.
to sound like 2001 Space Odyssey, where would you like to play a game? Like that type of a thing.
Right. And
So
that's the thing. But then I'm looking at it, I'm also looking, and again, the only reason why I'm kind of even because I was juggling with this. I'm like, should I? Should I not? I mean, it's free through Google Play. So it's like, okay, do I really have something to lose? I I sent it out to my newsletter. I said, "Hey, what do you think? Would you something?" And I got a huge response back that no, that was not something they would be interested in. They weren't interested in it. However, like I said, when I go to book signings and I'm in in-person events, I am encountering a lot of people who say they only listen to books.
wait a minute, I'm
And if
confused.
I'm in a position,
If it,
go
if
ahead.
just clarify for 1 second, is
Mhm.
who your readership on your newsletter were not interested in audiobooks at all,
No,
or
AI,
audiobooks AI.
AI.
Okay. Now go ahead, go.
Yeah,
Sorry. I
that's
just seen
okay.
I was like,
No,
wait a minute.
sorry.
He's like
Sorry. No,
so-
AI, they are not interested. My newsletter subscribers are not interested. They say, by far, they are not interested in AI narrated books. They want the narrated, which again, I don't think that AI, at least at this point, is in any danger of replacing live narration. I just don't, because again, like you mentioned, the inflection, the voices, the emotion that they can add, that a narrator can add, you're not going to get that depth from an AI narration. However, looking at it unemotionally from a business standpoint, I'm in a situation where I'm like, okay, I can either have a product that could potentially appeal to people who are only listening, who are doing the majority of their listening, they're reading, quote unquote, in their car while they're on their commute, or I can just lose those readers altogether. So, from that standpoint, if I take the emotion out of it, if I take that and I just purely look at it from a business perspective, I have to consider it. I have to consider the AI narration. Even at least it is an experimental type of a situation. What about you? Have you ever thought
I
about it?
I I think I would probably record my books myself before I did AI, but I just don't have the time. And I
Mhm.
don't know, maybe if I hear an AI narrated book, and I deem the technology to be worth
Acceptable?
it, acceptable, I might. But if it's going to leave the story flat, flat,
Mhm.
I don't want anything that's going to leave my story flat. The
Right.
last thing I need is somebody, listening to an AI book, and then because it's basically, robotic or just on par with Microsoft Word's, playback, the audio playback.
Right.
I don't need somebody just panning a book before they gives the book the chance to come to life for them. That's
Right.
the whole point of us as authors, is to write stories that come to life for our readers. So I think the jury is still out as far as I am
Right.
concerned. But
Right.
AI also, in terms of narration, I would wonder what protections they give you for copyright infringement and for that type of a situation. I guess it wouldn't be much different than submitting an ebook,
Yeah.
that because they have access to the raw files that way.
Mhm.
The other thing that's happening now that is a problem with AI
Yes.
are artificial intelligence covers,
Mhm.
covers that are being generated through AI, based off of covers that are prominent and popular in specific genres. The algorithms are being searched by this AI technology, and then the imagery is being scraped. That's
Mm-hmm.
the terminology that they use. It's it basically they're like scraping all of the I don't know what the word I'm looking for, the key points
Mm-hmm.
of an image, and they're recreating these covers, or not recreating, but creating these covers off of that, and that just smacks wholeheartedly of copyright infringement, of
Yeah,
intellectual property
and I
infringement.
yeah, and I've also heard of them actually going and whether it's deposit photos or 123 stock, whatever it is, but actually going to there's been instances where they've been going to these stock sites and grabbing the photos, and even there's been covers created apparently with uh with images that have the watermark on them. They still
Yeah,
have the watermark on them. So
yeah.
these are not legitimately purchased
No,
photos.
no, they're not, because when,
Um,
unless you're having your own cover shoot, photo shoot done for your cover, where you're going to be proprietarily, the owner of the rights to use those photographs for any, for everything and anything.
mhm,
The next step, the other alternative for indie authors, and even other, authors that are with houses and so forth, is stock art. And you don't license a stock art to be exclusive. Other people can use that image. And I have a background in graphic design and Photoshop and so forth, and I know that with layering, that you're using multiple images and you're layering them together, and you're changing aspect and aspects of them to create something that is unique and different. Because you look at a stock photography image of just plain guy or a woman that's got her hand out, for like a paranormal cover, and you're going to create like an energy ball or a fireball or something in there for your quote unquote witch that's going to be on your
mhm,
cover. But you're changing the base nature of the image that you're buying. The base nature of the image, the raw image doesn't it's not something, you're not just going to take it from the stock portfolio and dump it on
right.
your cover and call it a day. No, you have to finesse it, you have to work with it, and so forth. And the layering that goes on with that is what's being infringed upon,
Mhm,
as well. It's so it is an artist's work, it is an artist's intellectual property that is being violated at that point in time. So it's the scraping and the spiders that kind of crawl across the internet and crawl across these sites and so forth, that just pull. Yeah, it'd be great if you could guarantee that the person that they're scraping the information from is then going to get an email saying, hey, we like this, we're going to pay you for the rights to
mhm,
use this. That would be great, because then the person is getting
mhm,
credit, they're getting paid for their creativity and their
mhm.
intellectual property. But that's not what's
Yeah,
happening.
I've heard that it's really affecting the pre-made cover industry in more so than the custom cover industry at this point. It's not to say it won't affect the custom cover industry in the future, but for now, the main industry that is being affected is the pre-made covers. To get a pre-made cover, most companies who sell those are selling them usually for $30-$40 a piece, which is a good deal for a cover. If you're, for to have a cover made, it's a
I
good
don't
deal
think I've
for
ever
that.
seen a pre-made that cheap. Where are you looking? You have to hook me up, sure.
Okay.
So
I've only looked at pre-mades once or twice, so maybe they've gone up, but I have back when I was looking at them, I think it was like $35 this person was selling pre-mades for. And
see, I've
you
seen
can
them for
do
150,
well, see,
between
I can get a
100 and
cus I
150.
that's more than that's about what I pay for my custom cover. So
Yeah,
why would I
not
do a
me.
pre-made
So
for that? So but the I guess this AI, I mean, this program that's like been the predominant program, which we won't mention its name in this segment, but you can get these scraped AI covers for like $4. So they're, it again, it's really hurting that pre-made industry because, the whole point was for them to be doing a cover. It was like kind of the best of both worlds. You could get a cover already pre-made. You had the feel, they could find one that had the feel of your story, that you could just kind of plug and play your title and then your name in there and
Right.
maybe one or two other little things
Right.
on the cover, and it was ready to go. And now, you can still do that with this AI, but for a fraction of the cost. But the downside, well, two downsides. One, the artist is not getting paid. I guess that's the big thing. It's kind of a twofold thing. The pre-made artists are not getting paid, but because people are not going to them, but also there's no guarantee at this point where the AI is getting that. And from a creative standpoint, even if you're, I know authors are looking, especially when you're sort of starting out, you're trying to save every penny that you can, but you really need to think about it from an just a moral standpoint, an ethical
It's not even
standpoint.
more than that. More than that, because you don't know where AI is scraping these images from. They may be
Yeah.
scraping images from Google,
Yeah.
where, you ever Google an image and, or put in a topic and then hit images, and then all
Mm-hmm.
of these pictures, these are pictures that people have uploaded to the internet that are being
Mm-hmm.
they're being gathered. And these are sometimes people's personal pictures, like the that whole hullabaloo that
Mm-hmm.
happened where there was an ad that they used a picture of a Down syndrome child in the in the I forget what it was that they did, but it was somebody's kid. That was, the image was just
Yeah.
like uploaded to Facebook, and it was
Mm-hmm.
scraped from there, and it was
And
and there
yeah.
was a huge lawsuit for that.
Yeah. And could you imagine if you, as an author, went through using this AI to create a beautiful cover for you? Let's just say it was gorgeous. Let's say it was just a great cover. You put it up there on Amazon and Barnes and all that stuff. You put it up for sale and it starts selling really well. It's doing well, it's doing good, and you get hit with a copyright infringement.
Yeah, cease and
You have
desist.
a cease and desist. You have to take that cover down or risk getting sued.
Well,
And not only that,
sometimes you will be sued regardless,
right,
you
but
know?
not only that, but Amazon especially does not take kindly to copyright infringements or disputes. If they think that you have, if they get a letter from a so and so copyright owner that you have infringed their rights, they pretty much give you like one chance to prove that you own this or that you have the rights to do this. And if you can't, they will take your book down. In
Yeah.
full stop. It was not matter how well your book is selling, they will take it down.
Yeah.
And
It's, for lack of a better term, it's just a real crappy thing to do. I
mhm,
mean, like you said, somebody's
yeah.
looking to your indie authors, especially newbie ones, are looking to do things on the cheap in a very but still try to be professional and have it look professional. We're all
Mhm,
looking to be able to keep our costs down, but this is something that you really have to think about because of the potential backlash. And I'm not talking about the social justice warriors who are going to get on, and be like, this is terrible, and boycott you and so forth. I'm not even talking about that because it's a whole nother kettle of fish. I'm talking about the backlash that could come to you from a legal point of view, from a credibility point of view, from your ability to be able to
mhm,
sell other books on platforms that now you've got a black mark against you,
mhm,
because plagiarism is plagiarism is plagiarism. Basically, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It is a duck. Okay, so
mhm.
you need to be able to have the confidence and don't think, well, I bought it, but I didn't make it, so therefore I'm not the one who's responsible. You will be lumped
Yeah.
into a lawsuit and you don't know when you buy something from a company that's using AI to scrape these images, that somewhere in the very bottom of the fine print, it doesn't say that by purchasing this, you then indemnify the company, the AI company, from all possible legal, infringements, and therefore it will lay solely on your shoulders if you do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's a very slippery slope,
Yep.
and I would stay away from it. I
Yep.
would not touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. No. Make sure
No way.
budget yourself
Mm-mm.
to be able to do something properly. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah, and there
properly.
are places that you can find decent covers for not that much money. Ask around and see. I mean, it is a lot of aspects. It is a get what you pay for, but you can get a decent cover for under $100. You
Yep.
can.
Yep.
It may take a little bit of work on your part, a little bit of trial and error, and of research, but you can find a decent cover out there for under $100, and it is well worth the effort at the onset than having to potentially worry about getting sued and having your book removed from sale entirely and getting the black mark on you as an author,
Yeah.
potentially. So I mean, there was a woman who an author who got caught up in a scandal because she went after a trademark copyright several years ago and created a huge thing in the book world with Cocktygate.
Mm.
And uh that's something that it's probably been, what, 4 years or more
Yeah.
since
You
that
haven't heard from
happened.
her. Yeah.
And pretty much every author that has been in this industry for at least that amount of time knows who she is and has not forgotten that. So that's something that she's going to carry with her probably the rest of her entire author career. So you don't want to be known as that person who had some big scandal attached to it, because again, like Marianne said, you get a black mark on your business as an author, as your integrity as an author, and you want to try to avoid that as much as possible.
Yep.
um
I mean, you wouldn't want somebody scraping your words.
no, no,
So why
no, no,
scrape
no.
someone else's intellectual property? You know,
Creativity is creativity, and photography is the same thing. Unless you're paying that photographer for that picture, then yeah, don't use it.
licenses, commercial licenses, and the various shades of those licenses are very important. You have to read what you're allowed to
Yeah,
do and what you're not allowed to do.
right,
It's like when you
right.
download fonts, same thing. You know,
Yep.
for personal use means for personal use. You can't just take one and use it for commercial use. That's a violation of
Hmm.
terms of service.
Yep.
So,
So be aware, running this is a business, and so you have to approach it as a business, which means you got to read those legal fine prints and those terms of service, which it sucks, but you got to do it to
and
be on
don't
the up
pay
and up.
and don't pay attention to the people that tell you it's a victimless crime, that taking things
Yeah, no,
off the
it's not.
internet, using images that you find on Google,
Hmm.
taking an image and removing the watermark on your own, whatever way you do it, it's that it's a victimless crime. It is not a victimless crime.
No, and a
And
perfect example of that is the return issue that was happening with ebooks,
yeah, that's another thing.
specifically on Amazon. Um, uh, Somebody just posted on one of my Facebook groups here recently that they were talking with a coworker, and this coworker's grandmother reads a book in a couple of days and then returns to Amazon. And when she explained to the coworker that, if you do that to one of my books, I get charged back for that. So you just read my book for free. My work is basically, nothing. You're stealing from me. And he had no idea. Like, he didn't understand that that's how it works, because there's this conception, this perception there, where if you go to a store, Amazon, Macy's, whatever, and you purchase something, you use it, and then you return it, that somehow, because this is a big store, that it's a victimless crime, that this store can absorb that. But that store doesn't really absorb that. That
No.
store charges somebody back for that. In the case of an ebook, they charge the author back.
Right.
In case of a piece of clothing, if you return something and say, oh, this, you wore this, and then oh, well, it had this, there's a string here missing or whatever, or it's pulled out or whatever, some minor defect, maybe you did that. It wasn't like that when you bought it. Maybe you did it, but you return that. The store doesn't, most of the time, doesn't take a loss, and they return it back to the manufacturer.
Right.
And maybe that manufacturer is a small ma and pa that has 10 employees that work for them, and you just keep, and if you have enough people that do that, that ma and pa could be out of business because they just keep credited it back. Same deal. I have seen authors share their numbers, and there are some of them who they will have a day in the negative where they're actually paying Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Kobo, whatever, they're paying them to basically paying people to read their books because they're actually getting a negative. They're getting charged back for books that people are returning. It's not a victimless crime.
Ebooks are not a library. It's not a library. There are libraries that have ebooks.
Yeah, go to libraries.
Go to the friggin' library. Don't use Amazon or Barnes and Noble as a library. Right. And don't, anybody who ever says to you it's a victimless crime. I had a family member, an in-law, my sister-in-law's brother, say to her, hey, Kate, I have about 100 ebooks, 100 free ebooks that I downloaded. Do you want them? And I said, where'd you get them from? He goes, some pirating site. And I was like, do you realize that you just took money out of the pocket of the person who wrote those books, that they're not getting a dime of royalties from those books? He was like, it's a victimless crime. I'm like, it's not a victimless crime. I said, I'm an author. I said, if my book is there and you read it, and now Kate's read it, and then whoever else you pander it to has read it, how many of those reads then do I not get credit for? I don't get paid for. I said, Amazon has a lending ability. You can actually loan a book to somebody, and I will get a portion of that as royalties because you've now something you've bought, you are now lending. I said, so don't tell me it's not a victimless crime. And there was nothing I could say that would convince him that it wasn't a victimless crime, because since it's on the internet, it should be free. Intellectual property shouldn't be property at all. And usually
the only way that you can sometimes convince people like that it's not is to personally relate it to whatever their job is, whatever they do, and just say, well, I want you to come in and I want you to work for an hour extra every day, but I'm not going to pay you for that work. And sometimes that will get through to them. They'll be like, well, I'm not coming in extra if you're not going to pay me. Well, that's the point. That right there is the point, because that's what you're doing. You're asking me to work for free. This is my job. I produce something that wouldn't have existed otherwise, that you're now consuming. And yet you are wanting me to do what I do that you get to enjoy for free.
Yeah,
and it's hard sometimes.
It's a more pervasive mindset. So, as authors who are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, part and parcel of what we're doing is not just to kind of spill the tea on the stuff that's going on in the industry this week, but to also get you to go out there and have these conversations with your readers, so that they know that they are literally robbing you of your livelihood. And for for authors, when you start off, a lot of us don't have a lightning strike where we, make $1 million, or even $10,000 off our first books. So if you've sold 100 books in a month, and 10 of them have been returned because people have read them and then returned them as a lending library, that's 10% of the money that you've earned. Think about it. 10%.
Yeah, and if you're just starting out, 10% can be a lot of money. I mean, it a dollar, if you're making $10 a month on average and you lose a dollar, that's only 10%, but that dollar is a lot of money compared, and you're only making 10. Now, if you're making 100,000 and 10,000, it's still a lot of money.
Right.
But, but it's just when you start thinking, because people will be like, oh, it's just such a small portion. But again, 1% is a lot. When you really start to break it down and you think about it, what if 10%, if you still work a day job, what if 10% of your income went away tomorrow?
Right. If you
You would
lost
notice
10%
it.
of your monthly income that you need, that you have
Mhm.
budgeted, if it went away just because of shrinkage, because somebody decided, oh well, we're going to give this away, even though she's earned it, we're just not going to pay her for it because,
Mhm.
it just disappeared, and we're not going to track down the people who have taken it, and that's exactly
Mhm.
how it feels when that
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. So
So,
it is, which leads us kind of into our last topic that we wanted to touch on today, which we're not going to spend too much time on, but just kind of we are rounding out the end of the year. And that means that we not only have to worry about Christmas and New Year's and planning for the new year, we also have to worry about taxes coming.
yes.
And all of the fun things that come with preparing to get those taxes and stuff. I know for me it is one of the most dreaded times of the year when it comes to business, because I have two businesses, not only my author business but also our woodworking business, that I have to try to get everything together and organize it. I have gotten better over the years where I have created a folder where I keep track of all of my business expenses. I have a separate account. If you do not have a separate account for your author business, I would highly suggest that you do get
Yes.
one. Um, Even
Doesn't
if
have
you
to be fancy.
just go to your bank, create a separate account, get a separate debit card,
Yep.
so that you can track your expenses. It will make doing your taxes so much easier, because the last thing you want to do is have to go through all of your personal accounts and go through with a highlighter and be like, "Oh, that's a business expense. Okay, there's another business expense." If you have it separate in a separate account, everything's there. You don't have to spend hours upon hours sifting through your personal accounts
Yep.
to find all that.
Yes. It's a big
So,
no-no with my accountant commingling. Commingling the accounts is a big no-no.
yes.
So the
Yes,
other
the
thing is,
IRS doesn't like that either.
no,
So,
if you do work for another author or an editing service or cover art, you know, if you are a PA for an author and you're an aspiring author yourself and they pay you, if you are not in the United States anyway, if you're not a W-2 employee, if you are a work for hire type of an employee, you have to make sure that they send you your 1099 form. You have to receive it by January 15th, because actually you should be receiving it before that, because I know for a fact when I did co-writing with another author, that and I was the one who was taking care of all the bookkeeping, meaning that the royalties were being paid into my account that I had uploaded the books to, with KDP, and I was collecting all of the royalties, and I had to pay her portion of the royalty share. At the end of the year, it was then my responsibility to make sure that I had all of her tax information to my accountant so that he could issue the 1099 form by January 15th. There's a rule. If
yeah.
you don't, then you have to pay a penalty. And so be sure that if you do have a situation where you are
Mhm.
co-writing with somebody and you're the one doing all of the financials, that you get them their 1099 by January 15th, or vice versa, that they get you yours, because you don't, that's what the responsibility is.
Yeah. Now there is a little bit of a loophole with PayPal. So if you do your payments via PayPal, a lot of times PayPal will actually take care of that for you. That PayPal will actually send that information to the person if they need to, because again, there's a $600 cutoff. So if you're not paying them more than $600 per
You don't
year,
have to file it. Yeah.
then you don't have to file it. So there are some specifics. So having it, the other, I guess my other recommendation is get a CPA.
Yes.
I cannot tell you how much better I felt after we got a CPA for our businesses, because I could just pick up the phone and call them. I'm not a big, like, I learned my lesson so hard after the first year that that we had our working business, because we were doing that before I started writing. But we went to H&R Block, and I'm not saying H&R Block is a bad place. Don't take it that way. But H&R Block, in my opinion, is more for personal taxes. If you have very simple personal taxes, then I think H&R Block, places like that, are fine. But if you're doing business taxes, especially, or more complicated personal taxes, where you have a lot of deductions or capital gains or things like that, I personally would not recommend a place like H&R Block, because you really want to build a relationship with the person who are just doing your taxes, so that they understand the nature of your business, and that you can call them up and ask them a question should you need to, because places like H&R Block, they rotate. They have different people in there all the time. Whereas with a CPA, if you have a dedicated CPA, you can pick up the phone and you can talk to the same person year after year.
They're familiar with your business, and they're familiar with your tax model, your business model, and so forth. I don't have any experience with any other seasonal tax companies, Liberty, H&R Block, none of them. I've never used them, so I cannot speak to them at all. I have a personal accountant that handles, my personal CPA that handles both my business, my husband and I, our business and our personal. So, and I know exactly what kind of wild hairs get up his butt when it comes to doing things like, no, how many times, smack that hand, no, you're not supposed to do that type of a thing. So and it's also, if you have a question, it's easy to have somebody to call,
it really is down to the question. It's the personalization, in my opinion, that makes it stand out, that makes having a CPA, and it's not really any more expensive, or at least not significantly so, to have a CPA. You're pretty much paying for the same services. It's just a matter of, one, you get, kind of a rotation. These people, they come in, I mean, they do it. It's a service, and it's a valuable service for what they're providing. Again, if you just have basic personal taxes, do you really need to have a CPA? It's your call. But if you have a business where you have a lot of, like I said, a lot of deductions and things like that, I mean, with being an author, you have to deduct your marketing expenses. You have to, any travel that you did, all of that stuff. You need to have that. And it's nice to have a CPA, because sometimes they can tell you that, going forward, you may want to do this instead of this. And that'll save you money on the back end. And anything that can save you from paying more to Uncle Sam or whoever your tax person is a good thing. Because I don't know about you, but I give plenty of more money than I would like to the federal government.
Yeah, we do too. But and there's also the different ways. Like, most of you who are aspiring authors probably do not have, or did not, or maybe even will not incorporate. Make yourself a corporation or an LLC, or an LLP or a subcorp, or a C corp. Those things are why you need to speak to a CPA too,
Yeah.
because they're, if you don't, then it's just doing business as is what it is. If you don't have yourself registered in some kind of a legal corporation of some kind, and I'm using the word corporation very loosely here because there's different types of way to categorize yourself. Then you are simply, Jane, Jane Schmo author doing, or like it would be Marianne Maria doing business as Marianne Danbury, M.A. Maria, Marianne Maria. So there are no protections when you do it that way. None whatsoever. You run into a situation where, like we were talking about with AI, and you get a cease and desist letter, every single one of your personal assets, from your house to your bank account to your car and everything in between, then becomes fair game. It becomes fair game for somebody to come after. And this is why spend the friggin' $100 and register yourself as some form of a corporation. Just do it. Because then you will separate your personal assets from your business assets.
But again, that's something to discuss with a CPA, because
Yes.
a CPA can look at your specific situation and let you know what is going to be the best option for you and for your business. So
Correct.
that's again, I cannot stress enough how important a CPA is. I really can't. Find yourself a good CPA that you jive with, that you trust, and build the relationship, and you will not regret it.
Nope.
So I think that's a good note to end our conversation on today. And I think we have covered wide gamut of of news and information that's been going on. And I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation. And if you have any questions, feel free to click the link below. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description. And if it is, if you're listening on one of our podcast stations, it is in the show notes below in the description. You can go to our website and leave us a comment or let us know how you feel. I'm kind of interested to hear if anybody has any experience with the AI, either on the cover side or on the audio narration. But until next time, I hope you have a great week of writing, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wait! Before you go, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and check us out on our website, boundbybookspodcast.com.